Welcome to Impact 2025, our continuing conversation where we talk about all different types of topics: race, religion, current events, everything that you can think of. This is that opportunity for you to join and engage in conversation. So feel free to type your questions and your comments into the comment section as we go through and we discuss our topic. As always, I like to start with what other things are we doing here. And so, Money on Thursdays, right here on Facebook and YouTube, we have Thursday Thirst, our weekly Bible study. On Sundays, right here on Facebook, YouTube, and in person, we have worship service. So you can come to the address that's on the screen. And on Tuesdays, that's today at 7 o'clock, we have a time of prayer from 7 to 7:45. And of course, at 8, we have Impact 2025, where you are right now. All right. A lot of stuff going on as always. However, we're going to deviate from talking about a current event or anything like that, and just a basic question, just a simple question. As a population, you look at it in the United States as a whole. You can look at it at the world as a whole. I kind of look at it more at the United States. And the question is, are we less smart as a society? That's the nice way to say it. The blunt and straightforward way to say it is, as a world, are we getting dumber? Are we dumber? When you have you have almost every generation talking about, oh well, back in the day, back in our day, or we used to work hard, or we would do this. And so you don't want to get into the trap of the generational effect of generations looking down poorly on the future generations, thinking, all right, well, the future generation is just crazy and they're just not as smart as we used to be because we had to work harder, we had to do different things. So we're not trying to just fall into that little trap of just being critical of the younger group. Because I'm not just talking about younger people, the newer generations, those who are now the leaders, the 30-year-olds and the 20-year-olds, and sit back and say, well, they ain't got no good sense. No, I'm talking about all of us. So whether you are young, whether you are middle-aged, whether you are older, whether you are a lot older, as a group, as a society, are we just not as smart as we used to be? There's some things to consider. Right now, we have more information and more access to information than we've ever had before. Because of the internet, we've had the ability to just find out everything we want to find out. Right now, the big boom is because of AI. We can just ask questions and get answers and factual information to many of the things that we ask and we want to know about. And so we just have a glut of information. We're able to be more international than we've ever been before because of the ability to travel, so easily. It's not cheap, but so easily, where you can hop on an airplane. Half a day later, you're on a whole nother continent. And so you're able to be exposed to different realities. You're able to be exposed to different people. And so on that end, on that front, you have so much more information, so much more opportunity to do things and meet people that you never would have met before. You would think, okay, well, society must be much, much smarter. We've had a lot of technological advances. Now we have cell phones everywhere. We're able to connect with people. So you're looking at the internet and all those capabilities. You're looking at the ability to travel and move throughout the whole world with ease. And you're looking at the ability to stay connected with people, whether that be through the internet and Facebook and what, I don't know, Instagram and all these other things. And then you have cell phones and the ability to just stay connected. You can do cameras and all that kind of stuff and then talk to people. So we have the ability to stay connected. We have the ability to find out whatever information that we need to find out. And we have the ability to travel and experience new things. On the opposite end, you can sit back and you can say, the more information you got, the less you have to work for it. The more information that you have, the less sometimes that you have to think about it. You got to think. when we were all kids, we had questions. And a lot of times, I don't know if you grew up like I grew up, a lot of times you will ask the question to an adult or you ask the question to your parent and you would say, hey, what's the answer? And they would not give it to you. Sometimes they would, sometimes they would not. And they would say, look it up or find out or research it. Well, what do you think? And the effectiveness of that was to make you someone who worked for information. And then when you got the information, you didn't just look at it in one spot. You compared it to something else, or because you didn't want to come back wrong, especially if you asked an adult and you asked your parent. You don't want to come back to them when they ask you, well, did you find out the answer? And so you wanted to make sure you did a thorough assessment of all the information that you had available, whether that was encyclopedias. I know a lot of people don't know what those are anymore. Whether that was going to the library and going through and reading books, whether that was actually going around and talking to people and finding out, or even doing your own experiment. So, for example, if you were wondering about something outside, if I smush a bug, or if I smush half of the bug, will the other half still be alive? Or if I cut a worm in half, will it still be, well, will it be two worms? Sometimes you would have to go out there and you have to do your own little experiment. I know some of those sound a little gross. But we had to think through the process. You had to process through your mind. And if you have all the answers given to you, the internet, AI, then you no longer have to think through the process. You no longer have to investigate. You don't have to use that part of your brain to come up, search for answers. Everything is just given to you. And so just like your parents would not just give you every answer, or adults would not just give you every answer because they knew that would not help your critical thinking skills, having the internet available and having AI available doesn't help our critical thinking skills. And so you can sit back and say, well, we must be dumb. It's like when you were in school and they didn't let you use calculators because they wanted you to be able to learn on your own. You can't learn math and learn how to count, subtract, divide. You can't learn higher levels of math if you're just sitting there just plugging it into the calculator, because you're just not going to learn. And so, yeah, there was a significant argument to be made that we're just not as smart. The glut of information has made us less intelligent. And so those are two of the big opposing views. I'll dare say, I think based on where society is, based on some of the things that we are going through right now, based on the fact that we are repeating mistakes that have already been made. We know the answer when it comes to some of these mistakes in these situations. The great quote of, if you don't know your history, you're deemed to repeat it. We know our history, yet we're repeating it anyway. That kind of leans toward, hey, are we not thinking through the process? Are we not being wise? Or do we not even have the ability to be wise, the ability to think through the process? We're so easily fooled and tricked nowadays. You get half truths and half information, and now you're just going down the line and on your conspiracy theories and other things like that. Is it because we don't have the ability to think? Comment. In today's society, we are not encouraged to think or reason. Interesting. We assume that AI has the answer. So what we must realize is the information that computers have, or the decisions or information that AI gives, is based on information that is available to it. Absolutely. One of the things that people always want to remind, you always hear these scientists and these computer engineers remind that, if you put bad information in, you get bad information out. Whatever you put in is what you get out. So garbage in equals garbage out. And so anything that AI is operating off of, it's because it was input into it. Now, you're like, well, no, I created AI to go out here and find all the information available on the internet and all the information available in the, all in the World Wide Web. And so it's coming up and collecting all this information and then coming back. At the end of the day, it can only collect what it can collect. If you have information that is in a book that is not on the internet, AI can't collect it. If you have information that is out in the environment, real world stuff, and there's nobody that's talking about it on the internet, AI cannot collect it. And so I think that that's some of the things, and that's what the comment is. At the end of the day, whatever you put in there is what AI is able to pull out. If your AI that you program is racist and bigoted and sexist, and whatever else you want to make it, that's what's going to be coming out. If you just act a certain way and all the information that you want to put in for AI to gather is slanted towards your certain way, that's what AI is going to be. It's only going to be what you put in. We don't have we have AI, but what we don't have is individual androids. When I say androids, I'm talking about computer people walking around where they can go and they can gather their own information. At that point, maybe you might get some different answers. It's not just about the input that you put in, because they're able to move and find other resources. Right now, they can only get what they can get, and they can only get what you put in. And so, like I said, if it's in a book, they can't read that. If you ask them to tell me what your such and such in your family looks like, and you haven't put all their pictures up on Facebook, they're gonna struggle. They ain't gonna struggle because they can't look in your photo album unless your photo album again is online. So, yeah, and that I think that's what's problematic. We must realize that it's only what is put in, and so they can't answer questions that are not online or have not been addressed online or haven't been addressed properly online. And so I think that what it comes down to for a lot of us. It's, do we have the reasoning skills? Next, here's some points. One, the rules have changed because of algorithms. And when I'm talking about algorithms, whether it be your TV, the streaming services that you watch, or whether it be your phone, and the different news articles or whatever you have, there's algorithms that are pushing you towards certain areas. And so you're only seeing certain stories, you're only seeing certain shows, you're only seeing certain advertisement that kind of fits your algorithm. And your algorithm is based on what have you looked at in the past? What do they think that you like? Now, because of that, you have limited information. And so because of this limited information, you have to really have a grasp and an understanding that there's an algorithm out here, and that for you to be truly informed about a subject or a topic, you have to get outside of your algorithm. Well, how do I do that? Well, all of your research or all of your articles or everything like that can't be something that you clicked on, that you chose. Can't be your favorite stuff. Sometimes you have to go outside of your comfort zone. Sometimes you have to participate in a forum where you can talk to other people who are outside of your comfort area, or you have to just be able to look at multiple sides. So it's the easiest thing when they talk about multiple sides, you're talking about political issues or government issues. You have to be able to look at not only your favorite channel, whether it be CNN or MSNBC or Newsmax or Fox News or PBS. You have to be able to look at multiple ones, ABC News, NBC. Like, you have to really be able to look at multiple sides to kind of see what both sides are saying. Especially when we're talking about, politics. It's very good to look at it from the national standpoint, because you're not going to be able to get a full understanding. And I think that's where it comes to the problem, that we're not. Many of us are not doing that. So the question then comes, are we teaching it? Is that what the schools are teaching? Well, the schools have now gone to teaching to standardized testing. It's a lot harder to sit back and say, well, I got to teach you the test, and I'm going to teach you how to think, how to reason, teach you what logic is, teach you what understanding and critical thinking skills are. Those are not things or subject matters that they teach. What they teach is, can you pass this test? And so whereas before, the curriculum was based on, all right, we have to knock off such and such topics, and then when we're done with those, or such and such subjects, when we're done with those, we can also talk about other things. We can expand into, well, what do we need? What does this classroom need? What does this group of kids need? We need to talk about critical thinking skills because we're not using those. We need to think about how logic and other things like that. Well, we don't have time to do that as much anymore. And so when are these kids being able to taught how to truly think, how to think beyond just taking a test? We have an obsession as a society here in the United States with sports, an obsession with sports. Whereas before, when you were young, or when people were young, you might do one sport. You might do another sport. You even play a couple of different sports. But sports were a lot of times connected to school, maybe to the rec center. They lasted a little while. That was it. Now we have a lot of semi-pro kids out here who are joining up to these travel leagues, and they are playing sports all year round. They are playing one sport or two sports that they play for throughout the regular season and then in the off seasons as well. And so they're just constantly doing these sports, constantly doing the sports, constantly doing the sports. They're traveling to different places and different locations. And so one of the things that they miss out on is being well rounded. But another thing that they miss out on is being able to spend more time in uh, areas of developing, critical thinking skills. You have critical sports thinking skills. A lot of people say, well, they have good basketball knowledge or they have good football knowledge. Well, that's cool, and that's what you garner from going and playing these sports all year long. But you need to have general knowledge as well, and being able to have critical thinking skills when it comes to things outside of that. What we do know about a lot of sports stars, what we do know about a lot of entertainers, a lot of professionals, period, even down to business people. If you're going to be great at something, you have to work really hard. And usually when you're great at something, it's to the detriment of something else. And for many people, especially when you're talking to these athletes and these business people, the detriment is their common sense is not there. They are great at being able to put together a business, and they are terrible at being able to use logic. And so they make poor decisions. When you have sports people trying to be politicians, I was talking about one today. Sometimes you sit back and you're like, well, where are these people? They have no logic. They have no critical thinking skills because they spend all their time playing sports. And so they're great at their sport. But if you're going to be great at one thing, it usually is going to pull away from something else. Another comment. Many people today do not want to think through the process. They want to be told the answer. Whatever they hear, they assume is true. Remember the commercial where the woman said, it must be true. It's on the internet. Yeah. And that's right there. They don't want to think through the process. And yeah, a lot of people, we're fundamentally lazy when it comes to our intellect. Whatever the first answer is that we're given, we just roll with that. And then we stick with it. And then psychologically, we decide that we're going to defend it because it was the first one. It was the one we fell in love with as the answer. So we're just going to stick with that. And that's sort of the bad part of the process. I think some of what we have, and so to answer the initial question at the beginning is, I do think we're less intelligent as a society, and the reason is not because we don't have the ability; it's just because we don't have the desire. We're preoccupied with other things, and we are fundamentally lazy when it comes to being intellectual. And so we whatever the first answer is that we get, we take it. Whatever AI is, we take it. And we take these answers and we latch onto them, and we latch to what we like. And then we get emotionally involved. And then we defend it. And then we're taught by leaders that defending your answer and staying firm and staying consistent is good. Being strong with your answer, not being so you can't back down. You can't apologize. You can't pivot and say, "Ooh, I was wrong." You can't decide, well, with new information, maybe I need to think again. No, what is being celebrated is being the same. And if you are someone who changes, people call you, they'll be like, "Oh no, you're fake," because you changed your mind, or you admitted that you were wrong. And so, because of that type of attitude, we've kind of been teaching that through. And what that does is make us less intelligent because it's not about being right. It's not about growing. It's not about changing. It's about, I said it, and so that's what it is. And well, we proved you wrong. Here's the evidence. No, I said it, so I'm gonna just stick with that. And those type of characteristics, which we celebrate now, is one of the reasons I think that we as a group have become less intelligent. There are a lot of people, and I'm gonna move a little bit political right now. A lot of people who vote for a candidate, and they complain about the candidate. They will see that the candidate does horrible things, may have done some crimes. And I'm not talking about a particular candidate. I know you're thinking I'm talking about Trump. No, I am talking about him, but I'm talking about a lot of folks. They commit crimes. They embezzle money. They do a lot of stuff. And then they get reelected again because people they don't want to be wrong. We want to be like, whoa, I'm with this party and this person did such and such, but I'm going to support them because I don't want to be wrong. I want my party to be right. I want to be right. I want to be a part of the winning team. And that kind of thought process, I think, is what makes us less intelligent. We can't look for truth. We can't look for what's right and what's correct. We just have to go with trying to win. And I think the evidence is in what's going on in society. When you look around and you see where we are as a people, and I think that's the evidence is very clear for me. When we see people being hurt and harmed, when we see that we're doing the same mistakes from previous generations, the exact same way. And I can understand there's a cycle and a pattern of doing things, doing some of the same things over again, but it's bad the way we do it. It's again, it was the saying always was, know your history and then you won't repeat it. But we know our history and we know the bad things and we're going to do it again anyway. I think that's where we are. And that's what makes it a less intelligent situation. So we have I think the glut of information, the glut of opportunity, even the glut of money that we've had, all of these things have led to us being just intellectually just less, We're not what we were. Now, let's talk about the church. Let's talk about the church. I think that some of us we just don't have the intellect when it comes to the church. Now, that's a weird one because you had a time where there was a lot of people in church, and you'll sit back and you say, well, some people couldn't read, some people didn't have a good education, but you had a lot more people in church. And so there's no way the church can be less smart than it was then, because back then you had a lot of folk and you didn't even know what their educational level was. They just went in the church, they listened, and you don't even know if they had the ability to really read and understand the Bible. That's a good point. However, I think one of the reasons that we are now less intelligent when it comes to the church is because you have so many people who, instead of being able to listen and follow, want to make their own rules. Or even though we can sit back and we can read, instead of reading the Bible, we want to read books. We want to read books written by this leader and that leader and this leader and that leader. And then we lean more towards the books than we do the Bible. We've replaced the Bible with the books, where you can do both. Read the book, read the Bible, stay with the Bible. But I think when it comes to the church in our intelligence, I think that's where I think our arrogance has kind of got us caught. And so we're less intelligent, I think, because we're just way more arrogant. Everybody thinks they know the answer. The pastor says this, but you know what? He don't know what he's talking about because I can read just like he can read. Well, then what you got to pass? I'm not going to, I haven't been in court that often, but I'm not going to sit back and tell my lawyer, like, you don't know what you're talking about. I think I need to trust my lawyer. Now, if I got a bad lawyer, maybe I'll get a different lawyer, but I'm not going to sit out here and just try to act like I study law. That's not what I do. You are right. We are intellectually lazy. To study, to think through an issue takes effort. People don't like to be wrong, and they don't like to be challenged. Yeah. I totally agree. I think our arrogance is one of the reasons, especially in the church. Our arrogance is our problem. Some of us think and you think about these statements, and you think about whether they sound arrogant. All the people in the church are bad. And so I don't need to go there and just be hanging out with a bunch of people who just acting up. They bad, but what are you? It's arrogant, thinking that you're better than everybody else because they bad and they running out here and all of a sudden, you perfect. Or you sit back and you say, Well, I'm not going to church because I can do all of that in my house. So you can read the Bible at your house. You can spend a significant amount of time in the Word at your house. You can be able to be in relationship and be in community with everybody else at your house. You can do all the things that a whole entire church does at your house. It's arrogant. Of course, the one where they're like, no, pastor really don't know what he's talking about. Arrogant. I think arrogance has really gotten away. And so we're arrogant, we're lazy. But here's the last one that I think of why we aren't smart. And I blame this on I don't know when it started. I'm gonna blame it on in the 90s when everybody got a trophy. When these parents thought that it made sense for everyone to get a trophy. And then we had to make sure that we looked at everybody's feelings. And we became a little bit more of a feeling society. Respect everybody's feelings. We got to a place where everyone has their own reality. And we celebrate everybody having their own reality. They need to speak their truth, not the truth, their truth. They need to tell their story, not what happened, just tell their story. And you can't tell me how I feel about the situation. That's true. That's true. One of the reasons that I think we're less intelligent is because instead of trying to find truth, instead of trying to find what's right, instead of trying to sue for peace, as they say, we just want to be in our feelings. We care about how we feel, how we felt about a situation. Well, what about the other person? We care about how we felt about a situation, but what about what actually happened? We care about how we feel and our truth. Well, what about the real truth? You're not even going to try to look for the truth when all that matters is how you feel. And that goes back to the laziness. You're not even going to try to critically think about the situation because all you're doing is, all that's important is how you feel. You're not going to try to sit back and see all the other sides because all you have to care about is how you feel. Again, arrogant. So I think those are some of the issues that all fit into why we are less intelligent. And the main thing is because we're all about ourselves. We're selfish. We're arrogant. We're lazy. And we want our truth, our story to be just the end all be all. So however we feel. And so that makes it so that we can't be critically thinking. We can't be able to sit back and say, well, I was wrong. Or I need to look at this again. Or that's an interesting point. I disagree with you, but I will take this home and ponder it and see whether or not maybe I need to move a different path in a different way. And so, yeah, I think we're definitely, in my mind, less intelligent. And it's not because we're any less have the ability. We haven't lost our ability, and we have way more access to information. We just don't want to do the mental work. If we are honest, most people in the church are not reading the Bible. What many are doing is listening to whatever they like and fits their agenda. Yeah. And the reason I love that one is because you're right. And it says it right there. What most people are doing is listening to whatever they like. And so if you sit here and you're listening to a pastor talk, or you're listening to, you're in Bible study, 30 minutes goes by, you've listened to the 5 to 10 minutes of stuff that you like, and the other 20 minutes, I ain't worried about that. And I think that's the problem. I think it's right there. That's the problem. You're only listening to what you like. The itchy ears where we're out here, we're trying to find the stuff that we like, and then we're just going to leave everything else alone. And so, it's like, hey, it's funny. You hear, all right, you're supposed to love your neighbor as you love yourself. All you heard was love yourself. You ain't hear nothing about the neighbor. You just heard love yourself. There's a whole political party where that's all they heard is love yourself. And so, yeah, I think that's what it is. I think that's what it is, especially in the church. All they hear is, what they want to hear. And so, unfortunately, it don't matter if you have a sermon that's, I guess, 10 minutes or you have a sermon that's 5 hours. At the end of the day, they only gonna hear whatever they want to hear. And everything else is just gonna be a waste. All right. Well, that's it. I know that was more me just kind of telling you my opinion about things. I appreciate all the comments that came in. I really do think as a society, we need to, let's be cognizant of it. You can't change the whole society, but you can change who you are. You can change a little bit of the people around you in the sense of let's slow down. Uh, let's have real conversations like what we're having now, and let's try to think through it. And let's look out um, for those bad moments of where we're arrogant, where we care about only about our feelings and our truth, and we need to be looking for the whole thing, or where we're only looking at the one side of the story that looks good for us, and we need to just do a little bit more work and try to find out, all right, what are there multiple sides to the situation? And the last one I think is very important. We need to be able to be wrong, be able to go back and say, well, maybe what I thought wasn't right. All right, well, that's it. I appreciate the comments that came in. Again, I want to remind people about the different offers that we have. Thursday at 7 o'clock, Thursday, our weekly Bible study. Please come to that. Sundays at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time here on Facebook, YouTube, and in person at the address that's on your screen. We have worship service. On Tuesdays at 7 o'clock from 7 to 7:45, we have a time of prayer. Please pray with everyone else that's in the ministry. And then, of course, at 8, we have Impact 2025, our weekly discussion. Thank you for joining us. Please continue to join us. Join us again.